I did want to note from the last lesson that if we do add more than 4 columns for items in the grid, in the columns grid, it's actually automatically going to add a new row to put the items within. So this lesson, we're going to look a little bit more about what we can do with the template columns as well as the template rows. So I'm going to remove out some of this excess content that we had last time. Go back out and refresh it. So we've got our default where we've got the 4 columns. And if, for instance, the first column, we want it to set to 100 pixels, let's see what happens. So this one gets limited to be 100 pixels wide, and whereas the other ones are going to be still able to adjust and resize. And that one that we do have a set width to, it's actually not going to resize less than the 100 pixels. So keep that in mind when you are creating your structure. The auto just automatically takes the proportion to it. So there was whatever amount of space is left. If we have 3 autos, it's going to divide it by 3. And if we have another one where we've got a set width of 200 pixels, then the remaining 2 are going to take the remaining space and divide it between themselves. And then the other one where we've got the first column and the third column, they're going to stay static. There's also a grid template row. So this is if we do have enough content for that. And previously we didn't, we only have the 6. So let's do a 6 by 6, and we're going to adjust the size of the rows. So the first and second row. So we only have 6 possible elements that are within the container. So we're going to minimize this to be 100 pixels high, and then the last one will just be auto. So whatever amount of space is left is what's going to be allocated to it. So it's not an easy one to make the adjustments on, but if we do have the smaller screens, then you can see that it's structuring and it's creating the grid according to how much space we have. And if we also do an overflow hidden to hide the content that's outside of our element container, then that's also going to take place, and we're going to be able to hide it from the row. There's also the option to justify content, so we don't have to use the template rows, and it can automatically space it evenly if we want. So let's, well, we can keep this in and just comment this line out. And let's add in the justify content, and we'll set it to be centered. Actually, it's going to be space evenly. And this is adjusting on the horizontal, on the x-axis. So it's spacing it evenly on the x-axis and applying to the items that are contained within the parent. So it's spacing it evenly for the elements that we're not. And I'm going to update these once again just to go back to auto. So by default as well, it's going to space it evenly, but it's automatically setting the size and creating the gap between the elements. So it allows us to align the grid inside the container, the items within the container, and applying the value of space evenly will give the columns equal amount of space between them and around them. And I'm also going to get rid of this grid gap, and we'll do a quick refresh. And also there's the space around and space between. So spreading the space around. So that, again, adjusts it and provides space around each one of the elements, each one of the children that's within the main container. And we see that we've got the even spacing. So even if we're shrinking it down, we still have the even spacing between them. And there's also one last one, which was the space between. So resizing it, and the space between moves them and only accounts for space that's between the different elements that are on the page. So allowing us to see the red background parent There's also to justify content. So you can justify content to the start position. So let's bring it over to the left-hand side. There's also to the end position. And we also saw this within the flex box where we can move it to the left for start, end for the right-hand side, and then just center if we want to center that entire block of content. And that just simply centers it in the center. There's also options to align the content. So let's update the height that we have to work with, and I'll set this to be 600 pixels. So let's remove the justify and set the align content, and we'll center align the content. And this, just as we saw with the flex box, this is how we can vertically center it. There's also the space evenly for the line content. And the line content is on the vertical axis. So that allows us to space them out evenly. We also have the space around, space between start and end for the align. So same thing that we saw with the justify, where we can set it, and we can set it to the end, which will post it all right at the bottom. And there's also the start, which will post it to the top. And then as well, you can do a combination of the two, where we've got it pulled to the bottom, and then for the horizontal, it's centered. So try it out. And coming up next, we're going to look at some more that you can do with the grid items.